Well, welcome to the next episode of the Christ-centered Cosmic Civilization as we continue to think about those wonderful Magi from long ago and all these historical accounts of them. Where were they from? What did they do? And then this document down from Adam through Seth, Noah, and so on, Cyrus, to be hidden in this Chinese cave of wonders. And then they've all travelled by the star and all of that. And we're actually looking this time, continuing to look at the Armenian account of the Nativity, or one of the Armenian accounts of the Nativity. And we've got to, they've been dancing, playing trumpets, all the armies, and a huge carry-on of excitement and worship and wonder when they've got to the cave. And the fact that he's born in a cave is of really absolutely universal character in these testimonies. He's definitely born in a cave, that's for sure. But it's quite intimidating for Mary and Joseph, as we'll see in a moment. But before we do that, last time we spent some time thinking about where in the world Melchior, Caspar, and Balthazar came from. Balthazar's African from Ethiopia, Caspar's Central Asia, Pakistan, India, and region, and then Malcolm, he's probably more Chinese, Burma, Tibet, like that, and the Pacific Coast region again. But now, what about their appearance? There's quite fascinating how descriptions of what they look like are handed down, and different historians and gather these records of the appearance of the Magi, some older, some younger, and of them, because they're often depicted as three equally aged men. But in the case of Gondopar, Caspar, he, of course, has yet to found his mighty Central Asian empire. So he can't be an old, just it stands to reason his great accomplishments lie ahead of him. So he, to me anyway, we'll find out from PJ, who'll tell us about the appearance of them as it's been handed down. But I would have assumed that Caspar Gondopar must have been a younger man, because he accomplishes many things later. But let's find out. What sources do we have about their appearance? Where's the best place to go just to get a grasp? What did they look like? You take us through this.
So some of the earliest stuff is in art, so that's obviously hard to show you on a podcast, but you can look it up. You can see there's ancient, in catacombs, on mosaics and all of that. There's a definite idea, and the three... So, and as we're thinking, the Armenian gospel thing there is trying to bring together different ideas. So for a while, the 12 Magi was biggest in literature, but in art, it was always the three that was going to make it. They were visually interesting and different, these three we've thought about, Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. And so they often get artists more excited, so we get lots of that stuff. And Saint Bede, the venerable Bede, he gives his description from tradition, and that includes art. He thinks a lot about that side, and he tries to give a definitive account of what they look like from because he's incredibly learned. He had a huge library and had inherited a huge one from Benedict Bishop. He had a...
And Bede, I remember when I was young, people tended to dismiss him. He's not a serious historian. But I notice now people do tend to take him a lot more seriously, and that his access to materials from different parts of the world even is taken quite seriously, isn't it?
Yeah, and knowing people who have travelled, and I think he himself has travelled at times. He's as you say, there's been a lot more reassessment of him, as there have for loads of people like Philo and Josephus and all of them. We think about them a lot. there is in modern sort of more non-Christian academia than Christian academia taking saints seriously.
Honestly, we've talked about that often. Like, if you want to get to grips with these ancient historical sources, for some reason, it's not true of all Christian scholars, because there are some very good Christian scholars, but there's a lot of that are not very good, and they have this tendency to they want to prove that they're good scholars by doubting everything, even to the point where you're like, well, hang on, that's just ridiculous. Like, you've got to take that seriously. And they're like, nah, if it can be doubted, I will doubt it. They're sort of Cartesian almost. And so they end up being regarded as poor scholars because they're not taking things seriously that they should take it. We've got very frustrated with some of that. But here we go. I'm going to read the Bede stuff, and then we'll get PJ to react to each of them and see what he'll guide us about the opinion. So this Bede says these are the Magi who gave the gifts. The first was Melchior. Interestingly, he starts with Melchior. He seems quite often to be listed first. Maybe he travels the furthest. I don't know. Melchior. Now listen to this. Old and aging with a full beard and long hair. So that's interesting. And Matt, picture it in your mind. He has a violet robe, a green cape, and a pair of shoes with blue and white mixed together. The work of many men. His turban was dressed in a varying composition. He offered gold as for a king. What about that? This sort of guy's a Chinese guy with long hair, which you get that kind of appearance, don't you, with Chinese, rulers and things.
Well, I think when we thought in the revelation of the Magi, each of these kingdoms send certain representatives to go to the cave. And so in the one closest to China, Word have been the first to have received word from these 12 representatives that become their commanders. So it does make sense he'd be first in sense. He's probably the first to get going. And yeah, so that's probably is that. And that he's got silk, obviously, that is closer to possibly in the sort of areas where you're getting silk produced. And so he has much readier access to it. Whereas in Rome, it's a huge commodity. And, it's probably quite expensive for him. But so he's to have a very wealthy stuff, he's got to have it worked in a particular way. It's got to have intricate weaving. So it can't just be silk. Like Romans could do that. They could just have a silk thing and then it's like, wow, he has a lot of money. Doesn't have to do anything with it. It's just there's silk. Whereas he's got to do something a bit more, doesn't he?
And the work of many men, his outfit. So Melchior, green, violet robe, green cape, blue and white shoes, long hair, long beard, old man. There we go. Second, Caspar Gondafar, Bede says he's young, beardless, redhead, a red-headed youth. He's got bright green robe, bright red cloak, and blue shoes. So the blue shoes, the other guy is blue and white, but his is just blue. Bright green, bright red, blue shoes. He offered incense as an offering worthy of God. So there you go. He's young and he's a redhead.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's stronger colours, isn't it?
Yeah.
That he's Melchior's gone very subtle. He's very, and then even when he's got blue shoes, he's mixed white in, so it's all understated for him. Whereas Caspar
he's gone large, hasn't he?
Yeah, but I suppose if he's got to rally support because he's going to declare independence and stuff, he's probably working on a brand more, whereas Melchior's probably much more settled and so he's got sort of soft power. Caspar has to work on hard power.
And the red hair, if he's from Pakistan, northern India, there is that way, because that idea that holy men have red hair is part of that whole tradition there. And he's got red hair. Either he's dyed it red because of this association with holiness, because of course Jesus has red hair. So that's all that association. Or there is, of course, that connection sometimes people connect it to the Greeks, like maybe, or something like that. I don't know what that tells us. I tend to think he may have dyed his hair because it's a sign of holiness, isn't it?
But as you say, that in the region you see this, and because his capital's in the mountains with Taxila. And in mountain areas, the red-headed gene basically means you can get enough vitamin D without getting lots of sunlight, and so it's useful in colder and cloudier and mountainous parts, and if you're indoors a lot. So it could be that
the mountainous region, cold mountainous region, will favour red-headedness.
And we know people from the area who do say you get that a lot more in the mountains, so it could just be that's where he's from.
Okay. The dyeing his hair red, he doesn't need to. He's a mountain dweller. And then the third, called Balthazar, black guy. He just says he's a black guy with a full beard. This is Bede writing. When's Bede again? What?
So he's one of the later church fathers, isn't he? He's like 6th century and 7th century, isn't he? So he's about the same time as this Armenian infancy thing.
That's right.
Or the translation.
The translation. So Balthazar black with a full beard, and he's got a dark red robe, interwoven with white, and he wore green shoes. He offered up myrrh for the Son of Man, professing that he must die. Wow. So the Ethiopian guy's bringing this profound gift to do with the crucifixion, really.
And interesting to note, he's the middle-aged one, and he's thinking about death, and he finds the solution in Jesus. That's a common thing people go through. I think each of their ages are sort of important. That you got Caspar, he's vibrant and thinking like, I've got to start season life. That's more his. Melchior's all like, nah, I've got it all settled, and I can just be sort of understated. Whereas they've all kind of got their own age thing, and so he's thinking about death.
A young man, a middle-aged man, and an old man, and each different, and each presumably wearing clothes that were culturally representative of where they're coming from, and it certainly feels like that way, that the colours are different, the styles are different. But Bede concludes they all wore clothes of pure silk, so the material is consistent, pure silk, because they were pure men, and they covered themselves in purity. So silk has an association with purity here for Bede.
I think silk even has an antibacterial effect, like it's something that is scientifically provable, like it's not just an ancient sort of superstition or something. So we've even got some soap in the GCHP offices that uses silk, like the liquid form of it, and so it is antibacterial in that sense. So it's quite interesting. That's a real thing, that it has a sort of
purifying effect. So it's not just symbolic of purity, it achieves purity. Yeah. Well, let's move on, because we've hopefully got a clearer picture in our minds now of the appearance of the three, ruling Magi. Because remember, there's 15 really. There's 15 of them, 3 who are at the top of the hierarchy, and then each of them seems to have 4 under Magi, and we don't get their appearances, but maybe dressed similarly. I don't know.
But we've got their names in the
we
Revelation
did get
of Magi,
we did get their names. I'll maybe try put all their names in the notes for this episode as well, so you can all enjoy that. Let's get back to the Armenian infancy gospel, because they've all arrived. Remember, and there's 12,000. They've got trumpets playing, dancing's going on. All these people dressed in these magnificent clothes from all over the world. Mary and Joseph, it says, terrified, they fled the cave, and the child, Jesus Christ, was left alone, sitting in the manger for the animals. So I find this interesting, that Mary and Joseph, because most people would pick the baby up and carry the baby with them while they were running away. But there's this kind of thing, you'll notice it in these episodes, that they don't feel like, it's as if they don't need to be with Jesus all the time, because he's not like an ordinary baby. That he doesn't, there's a thing that I think it comes in this document, that he doesn't even need sustenance in the same way that other babies do. And he's kind of self-contained and can manage himself. But they do leave him. And then all these princes saw Joseph, and they said to him, "Why are you startled and fleeing? Don't fear. We're people just like you." And then Joseph says, "Well, where have you come from, and who are you looking for?" And the Magi replied, "We've come from a distant land with many gifts, and we desire to see and worship the newborn child, the King of the Jews. If you know where he is, tell us so we may see him." Hearing this, Mary re-enters the cave. And again, it's always a cave. And she takes the child into her lap and glorified God with thanksgiving. And then Joseph's still outside chatting to the Magi, and he's kind of speechless. So he just points to the cave. And then it says, "The Magi came with joy to the entrance and saw the child seated in the manger. Falling down on their faces, the kings, princes, and the whole multitude of their throng worshipped him, and they presented their gifts." Here, then, there's a little extra bit about the gifts. Also, constantly note that they're always worshipping him. So it's an implicit recognition of his deity. But as you, PJ, say, later accounts after Nicaea and written in the medieval period, they go out of their way to give us like quite abstract definitions of the deity of Jesus. Here they don't do that, they just imply it.
Yeah, and it referred to his father as the true king of Israel earlier. And so, yeah, it does sort of, every now and then does even call Jesus God.
Yeah.
But whereas, as you say, even in the lead up to Nicaea, during and after, then there's an incredible sort of focus. Every single time you mention Jesus, it's like he's God and the Father's God and all that. You've got it each time.
They share the same divine substance and things like this.
Whereas it is to them implied, if you've got the Son of the Father, like Athanasius points out, if you've got the Son of God, for him to be the true Son, he has to be the same sort of species. He has to be equally God in the same sense the Father and the Son are equally human. So, like, that is sort of apparent to someone who had been writing before Nicaea and everything. That's actually the culture of it. And so when this is like just saying, refers to the Jesus or the divinity of Jesus in these natural biblical ways rather than an overly philosophical way, that is one of the reasons we might think the original Syriac version of this book we're reading. So it's called the Armenian Gospel, but it's not originally Armenian. It's originally Syriac, but we only have it in Armenian. But this original would seem to be 3rd century because it doesn't seem to be too lost in that sort of well, you can never overstate the divinity of Jesus, but that way you've got. No,
but they don't see that. It's like obvious. Yeah, you don't need to make a big thing about it because it's like, well, obviously he is. And I always think, like in the Gospels, it's that the religious kind of zealot people are upset with Jesus, and they say he thinks he's the Son of the Father, and therefore makes himself equal with God. So I love that little verse because it says, as if he is the Son of the Father, he is equal to the Father, and that kind of assumption is just there. And it's only later that people have to go, hang on, let us tell you philosophically exactly what that means. Whereas for regular people who are they understand that. You don't need that extra layer of abstraction.
Yeah.
Okay, so the gifts of the Magi, look at this. I'll go through them and then see if you want to comment on the extravagance and quantity of gifts. So first came Caspar, the King of India. This podcast and all my work depends entirely on donations. It's only through your support that all this research and teaching can be free for so many. If you're in a position to help, please consider supporting the mission by giving to the Biblical Frameworks charity. Find out how at biblicalframeworks.com and look for the Give link. Thank you. And he opened the precious nard cassia, cinnamon, frankincense, other burnable substances, sweet-smelling ointments and incense, and immediately a sweet fragrance filled the cave. So he's bringing the incense, and he's bringing... And it smells good. It smells good. Does that correspond? So that's incense. That's right. That's what Bede also said, that it's the sweet-smelling burnables that he brings. What about that incense from India?
Yeah, so you've got... I think what's interesting about it is that we expect there to be, from all the prophecies everyone knows are about the three kings, we know they gave more than just myrrh, frankincense, and gold, because it mentions things like silver and it mentions all sorts, and they load up loads of camels, and that all gets mentioned in the prophecies. And so all Matthew has to do is that, and he just alludes to the prophecy, and you think, oh, well, that's all going to be coming true. So he doesn't tell you the whole thing. He knows you've got to expect lots of camels, and you've got to expect, all of this. So we know there's more than just gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But those are incredibly meaningful substances. Yeah. So that's why Matthew focuses on those. But yeah, we know there's obviously lots more. And here we're getting an account of exactly how much. And cinnamon. So that is still, I think, one of India's big sort of exports. So that...
Well, recently, when I was in a shop, and they were selling incense sticks and things, and they were all from India. And the comment was, oh, well, that's where you get all your incense from. Even today. I don't think it's all from India today, but it was like the assumption was, even today. So that's what he's brought. Lots of burnable, sweet-smelling things. And as soon as he went in and got it out, the cave was filled with the aroma of all these wonderful fragrances. Then it says, Balthazar came. He opened his great treasure and presented... He has the gold here, whereas we know Bede says, no, it's Melchior who brought the gold. So there could be some confusion here. But Balthazar here is represented with, he brought gold and silver, precious gems, pearls, and sapphire.
So when we, so you'd think with gold... Because when Solomon wants gold, he goes to Ethiopia. So that, I think, is why Balthazar is the one
associate. So you can see why they assume he's getting it.
Yeah. And I think even in some of the prophecies, you get gold from Sheba, will come.
That's right.
So there's a solid account for that, but then there's also where is Saber, and then some people say that's like China, so that's why sometimes Melchior gets made the gold one. Sometimes even it's Caspar. So there's gold, there's lots of gold around. If you're a king, you've got them. But yeah, so it's a solid case that both Bede and this infancy gospel have. But you can imagine in Ethiopia you get lots of ancient and precious minerals.
Balthazar, he could be the one who brings the gold and silver then. The gems, the pearls, the sapphire. But Bede, I think Bede had it differently, didn't he?
But we thought, because he mentions the ages and everything, that he got someone middle-aged, could be having a midlife crisis, but doesn't, because he trusts in Jesus. So that sort of makes sense. You get more of his character, whereas I suppose this is just working with, he's from Ethiopia. It's like, wow, they're famous for exporting gold. So
it must be, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Melkon, or Melchior, and we think that's the Chinese guy, he here... In this account, the Armenian one, he's brought myrrh with aloes, muslin, cloth, purple, and other precious fabrics. So it's his clothes where Bede had him wearing crazy good clothes.
Yeah.
So he's brought loads of good cloths, but also myrrh for burial purposes.
Yeah. So that's when we think about myrrh and frankincense. What's interesting about them is they both, at the time, primarily derived from a place called the Frankincense Kingdom, also called Hadramut, in the south of Arabia. It's in Yemen. So that is one where they often think, like, well, you can't have Balthazar give them both, and so they wonder, like, exactly... So that's why the meaning behind one or the other is important. But you've got it here that you're bringing up the articles, and we've got Horn of Africa. You get lots of that So that's a heavily debated thing. But then when we see, if you think it's not just this one gift, it comes with a load of other things he's thinking about. So if you've got aloes and you've got the precious fabrics, and as we thought, so if you're using myrrh to purify a body for death, and then silk has that purificating, and then if he's based in China, then or if he's based in Persia, then you get all the silk traveling through, whichever one it is. That does seem to make sense if you think, all right, what's myrrh for? That fits into these other categories where you've got silk and all of that. And then you think, well, he's got to be the Persian or Chinese then. That really makes the most sense. So you can see that.
So they present all these gifts, and it turns out there's not just 3 gifts. There's the gifts, like there's gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but with each of them, tons of other associated gifts. And then I'll read again now from the Armenian account. It says, after each had presented his gift, the king stepped out of the cave and sat together in the open. They marveled to one another. How wonderful is this act we have witnessed with our eyes. They are poor and destitute of everything. That's interesting again, isn't it? Because now again, they're sometimes presented as wealthier with a second home in Bethlehem and things like that. Or that everybody, that they had the same level of economic prosperity as everybody else. But that's this testimony. I'll start it again. They marveled to one another. How wonderful is this act we've witnessed with our eyes. They are poor and destitute of everything, without a home, without a dwelling, without a place to rest, except for this deserted place that does not meet their needs, and without a covering over them. Why did we travel so far to see them? Let's speak the truth. What wondrous sign did we see? Let's tell one another what was revealed to us. And they agree. And then we'll note that in a minute, what actually happened. Each of them received a vision of Jesus as they gave their gift.
So you did have in the ancient world, like a kataluma is like a kind of hostel. It often gets translated. These were local synagogues and things would set these up to look after the poor and things. So they're not just poor in that they don't have, second homes and things they can rely on, but they're even down on their luck when they've gotten there. This hostel or the inn has totally run out of room, and they're just noting that. It's like they've lost. They don't have anything, so they don't even the stuff that's even just given for free. People have gotten there first, so they're just out of everything. So it's interesting to note that
the level of poverty. Now so each of them, Caspar says, when he gave the frankincense, he said, "I saw him as the Son of God embodied, seated on the throne of glory, with armies of bodiless beings serving him." Wow, so as he gave the gift, he was granted a vision of the identity of Jesus, and here it's the Son of God enthroned in heaven, commander of heaven's armies with these angelic beings, who are just called bodiless beings.
That word, so the word body there kind of means like flesh, like we see it with Paul when he says stuff about the spirit versus flesh. He's not like, because every now and then you get like an edgelord academic who's like, oh, maybe Paul was like a Gnostic sort of thing. And obviously it's not that. It's like, heaven is like a real place, and it's inhabited by somatic, bodily beings in one sense, but it's not body as in flesh and decaying and meat. It's like a different...
meat, so armies of non-meat beings, So Balthazar then says, when he presented his treasure, he says, physically I saw him as the Son of Man, the son of a king, seated on the highest of thrones with countless armies before him. So Caspar is Son of God, Balthazar Son of Man, both of them seeing him enthroned on high in charge of many armies.
And something interesting about the phrase Son of Man being associated with glory, because later, showing that this isn't a very late thing, even if we only have a late translation. Later, the phrase Son of Man becomes exclusively about him being dejected and suffering and everything. Whereas like as Jesus used it, he's like, you'll see the kind of Son of Man coming in glory and judging and surrounded by, like, Son of Man to him, to Daniel, to in the book of Enoch, and Son of Man is this glorious title. It's not about humility and dejection.
It's a divine title of divine heavenly glory, such that when Jesus says that he's the Son of Man, the high priest is totally outraged because he knows it means divine glory. Melkon, the Chinese Magi king, he said his one, remember, he's the older man, isn't he? And he said, I saw him bodily tortured and dead and risen from the dead. So the older man sees the passion, the sufferings, the death and resurrection of Jesus in his vision. And we're like, wow. And they were all amazed. They actually then say, there's a thing where they say, let's go back into the cave and see if we can get more visions. And we won't read all that out because essentially they all get the same, they each swap visions, basically.
There's an interesting thing Marco Polo and a few others bring up, because he interviews people about the wise men, because he goes into China and they all have slightly different, but then also we think it's representing the same thing. In his account that the Chinese and Persians and others gave him, they get their first vision when they're on the road to see Jesus, and they're all debating. He's like, no, he's the Son of Man. And he's like, no, he's going to be the suffering servant. They are all debating this. And then when they see him, they're like, what? I saw what you saw and all that. And so all they prepared were like about these first visions they had in their own country. And then they later see he's everything. And they're like, wow, he's all of that at once. Like, we thought, wouldn't it be amazing just to see you, the Son of Man? Wouldn't it be? And they're like, he's everything.
He's all of that. So the visions is that the Son of God who rules over the angels, the Son of Man who rules over the nations, and then there's the Lamb of God who dies and rises. And it's like, well, they can't all be the same person. And then when they kneel before him, they're all given the vision that brings it all together. Oh, he's all of those things. He's the commander of heaven's armies. He's commander over the earthly nations, but he's also the one who shows his glory in suffering, death, and eventually resurrection also. So when they've reconciled this in the account, they go and tell their armies, these 12,000 soldiers, truly, he is the Son of God who appeared to us in a likeness symbolic of the gifts we presented. And he accepted our greetings with respect and love. So again, how do they know that this little baby's greeting them with respect and love? You'll see, because then it says King Melkon, that's Melchior, the Chinese one, he took the document of the Testament. Remember, they've brought that book with them that's been passed down from the time of Adam via Noah. And he presents it to the child, the baby Jesus, and said, here is the text, the document which we have kept since our forefathers. And then here the child says, read the very document. So then he instructs them for them to read it out, which is what they do. They read it out there and then. And then you're thinking, well, what does it say? Well, it actually tells us what it says. They read out the text of this document handed down from the time of Adam. I'll tell you what, we'll save that till next time.